Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us at this event organized by Greenfox Academy. I am Bárdos. I will be your host for the evening. The topic of today's conversation is what makes low-code a booming technology. We are going to talk about trends, myths, and misconceptions. The goal of the conversation is to have a better understanding on low-code development with the help of our speakers from the field. We'll have Kristóf Bárdos, CEO and co-founder of Greenfox Academy, Jiří Krám, technology manager at Accenture,
Hello.
and Philippe Ozil, developer advocate at Salesforce, one of the leading low-code platforms. So why are we talking about low-code? The company Forrester came up with the low-code concept in 2014, which meant a true revolution for the IT sector. Gartner, a technology consultancy, estimated that the low-code market grew by 23% only in 2021, reaching a value of 13.8 billion last year. Some current predictions estimate that by 2024, up to 65% of application development will take place on low-code platforms. The new trend has a significant impact on the job market too, creating a huge demand for low-code developers. So our program will be about how low-code is today and what are the predictions for the future of low-code development. Our program will be 1 hour long with about 50 minutes of roundtable conversation and 10 minutes of Q&A. You can submit your Q&A questions for the panel members in the comment section on Facebook Live. And now I would like to ask our speakers to shortly introduce themselves. Kristóf?
Hi everyone, and thank you very much for Jiří and Philippe to accepting the invitation, and Katusz for hosting the event. My name is Kristóf Bárdos. I'm one of the founders of Greenfox Academy and the CEO of the company. This topic is very, very exciting to me because I can see a very big potential in low-code development as Greenfox main purpose is to help people changing their career. And we are always investigating that, what are the areas where the job market is going to be the highest demand. So it happened to be that I'm the in-house product owner of the low-code platform oriented syllabus development. So that's why I'm representing Greenfox here, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Kristóf. Jiří?
Okay, so have a nice evening. My name is Jiří Krám. I am a manager at Accenture's Salesforce practice here in Prague. We are responsible for 4 countries, which is Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and Romania. And the reason why, low-code is interesting for us because it's a very significant journey for a lot of developers that are coming in many times new to the practice. We have a lot of Greenfox alumni that actually started on a low-code platform, and I'm really looking forward for this discussion.
Thank you. And finally, Philippe.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. So I'm Philippe. I'm a developer advocate at Salesforce, and I've been in the company for about 6 years now. I'm a fairly technical person, so I'll be also talking a bit about code, but I know today is not the topic. It's also about low code. And I do have also a history with low code. I've been working for low code software vendors for about 15 years now. My previous company was also a low code vendor, so I'm very familiar with those technologies, and I think it's a great way to level the different set of skills that are required to come in the software industry. And I'm really excited to talk about all of this. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you so much for all of you for being here. And let's dive in. My first question is to all 3 of you, and it's just a basic question of what is low code? What is your own definition? Because there is a lot of things out there. And maybe let's start with you, Philippe. You just finished, so.
Sure thing. So for me, there are basically two types of development. There is the low code and the code. And there's also another way of calling it low code. We call it declarative. And essentially it's everything you can do with point and click technologies. It doesn't seem like much, but your mouse is actually quite powerful. And it's even more as software evolves. And as I mentioned earlier, I was working with various software vendors, and they each have a different approach to low code. These are fairly technical products. The previous experience I had was with a business process management solution. And this is something fairly complicated. You orchestrate different services, different people. Normally you would do that with code. But as soon as you start providing a tool which lets decision makers, business analysts, get part of the discussion and really start to draw out specification, then you can see that you have a lot more potential. So for me, low code is really something that opens the potential to contribution as part of the project. It's also a game changer for people who already have a job in different industries and want to convert to the software industry. It's a great way to approach technical solutions without needing a computer science degree. For me, this is really also a game changer. And I think with Trailhead, Salesforce is really democratizing this. So these are the key things I'm thinking about when I think about low code.
Thank you. Kristóf?
It's difficult to describe after Philippe because I have a very, very similar view on this, but I wouldn't go into the definition part, rather what are the key attributes. And one is making it more really inclusive for people who are actually having the problems or the new ideas that they want to develop. So it's making it more engaging for the team. So especially when we are talking about a little bit maybe no code and low code, so it's like the barrier is very thin. But people who understand the processes can really create their own applications with a little technical knowledge. On the other hand, it's also requiring technical knowledge. So programming is still an important part, but for the developer side, it brings a much faster execution. So they do not need to focus on writing yet again the boring part of the application that already exists. So for all the domain areas that are well covered, like a procurement or HR process or marketing sales process, just to name a few, but you can name any domains, you can really focus on the process. And I think this is what low code brings to us.
Great, thanks. Do you have anything to add, Jiří?
I think the guys really sum up it really well. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a perspective from the Accenture side, what we actually do with the low code and why we care. So as you know, Accenture is a technical consulting, and we do quite a lot of not just the technical type of work, but also helping with the whole change and digital transformation. And one of the things what we really see making a huge impact is that thanks to those low-code technologies, we can actually bring the experts in the field, like financial services or something like this, and they can really quickly learn the technologies. That's why we work very closely with Salesforce, for example, on a transformation of banking or insurance. And I think it's really key because in the past, the people would be normally doing just a PowerPoints or something like this, but right now they can actually do this process directly in Salesforce. And it's really accelerating the way how we can actually bring changes for the customers and bring the new customer experience or even help the companies grow or eliminate certain risks. So that's definitely one of the area what I really see the good potential.
Great, thanks. So my next question is for Philippe, because you are working a bit on the business side of low code as well. So can you tell us a bit about what are the specific business domain areas where low code is most common or beneficial?
Sure thing. So, and I think it really started with, as I mentioned, process definition, chaining operations from a business user point of view. And that is across different industries. Of course, the typical industries where you will see that are more finances, automotive, things like that. But now I think everybody is doing them, human resources and more. And this low-code technologies have evolved from beyond just pure application design. We can see now that you have a lot of WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get builders to create applications. And you even now start to see things like DevOps. DevOps used to be a hugely technical topic, but with tools like the Salesforce DevOps Center, now you can put in place some processes, some release processes that even business users can understand. And I think these are really the key directions where things are heading at. There's no real limit now. Even AI is accessible with low-code technology. So there are really no boundaries now. You can reach any kind of industry and topics.
Thank you. So we just heard how broad is the spectrum when it comes to the business domain areas, but how big is the low-code market now? What are the predictions for the future of the low-code market? Jiří, can you tell us about that a bit?
Okay, so when you think about low-code, it's driven by one very important element, which is basically the migration to the cloud. As you probably know, it's currently only like 20% of IT workloads are migrated to the cloud. So we still have a huge, chunk of work ahead of us. And there is one problem, which is that there are not enough people to do that. And that's the reason why we need to enable another type of developers. That's one of the very common, for example, way for getting the women to IT is helping them to learn low code, because it's much faster than just go through the traditional routes and stuff like this. And as said, like this thing is, let's say it's not isolated just to Salesforce. You can see it in, and I hope Phil not be annoyed when I'm going to say some other names like Microsoft, SAP, Oracle, and others. But basically, like everyone is jumping on the, train. So, my favorite topic is what we call industry clouds, which is, specialized kind of like the business models for, let's say, insurance, financial services, and stuff like this, which is helping a lot of with the implementations in those organizations. And what you can see, and it's not just Salesforce, you can see it in, again, like in Microsoft and SAP, that all these things are quite often a package solution with the configuration element, right? Which is this kind of like a low code stuff and the flows and things like this. But one of the things what is really important, which also Phil mentioned about DevOps, that basically even when you do low code, you can have some another team members that actually can do code, and you can actually combine these things together, which is super important, especially when you do some integration with some legacy systems in a banking or something. And that's the reason why we really see this area booming. Because especially right now, because of pandemic, like everyone is working from home, and people needs to onboard people quick, and they also need to build more services than any time before. And this low-code scenario is helping you to take the business experts or even the people that are actually new to the field, even like the students that actually just passed the university or studied Greenfox, for example, because we employ quite a lot of them. And they can become really sufficient, developers in this low-code environment. So it's definitely not going away anytime soon. It's going to be probably more and more demand for the low-code people. I really hope that more of them will be Salesforce, because this is what I care. But I know that there are some other, technologies that are actually trying to get to this as well.
Great, thanks. But even though that you are, all of you have been talking about how great low-code is and how big the market for low-code is, there are still a lot of people talking about the limitations of low-code. So what do you think? Is low-code applicable in the majority of where coding is needed? Or will it be applicable in the near future for everything? Maybe you can continue your thoughts on that, Jiří.
Okay, I'll continue, and then I will ask Phil to chime in, because I think that's something what we a little bit share as a topic, right? So the one thing what I really want to say from on behalf of Accenture here is that we really see as a super important topic the collaboration with our partners like Salesforce. The reason is very simple, because this journey, we are not here alone, right? Because if Salesforce isn't providing the tools help us to cross-train people and enable them to do this low-code journey, it wouldn't work. The same is that if you go to the client, we very often has to go together with the people from Salesforce, because these transformation projects are not simple things which you can do in few weeks or a few months. Sometimes it's taking years, right? And therefore, it's very important the collaboration across the vendors and the system integrators, but also I see super important role of what Kristóf is doing with Greenfox, because this is almost like the really like the pipeline, because you help people to get on the developer journey. We then employ them and help them to become proficient, but the Salesforce is also helping them to become the professionals. And the one thing what really Salesforce is doing really well is that Salesforce is kind of really well integrated with, for example, the work which they currently do with AWS. It's fascinating, right? And AWS also supports a lot of low-code development. So I think this is kind of the essential for this journey, because you're absolutely right. One of the biggest limitation of the previous low-code experiences was that it was not as low-code as it looks like from the outside, and even when it was producing some code, it was sometimes not a very good code. So the people basically avoid it. And that's the reason why the collaboration is really essential for us to build those tools much smarter. And this is what Phil can tell you how they are doing it in Salesforce.
Perfect.
So
Great answer. It's going to be hard to add to this. Maybe I'm going to take it from more technical side of what I would like to say is that there are two key things I think people kind of misjudge or have a misconception about when we talk about low code. When you get into larger projects, there are really two aspects we need to think of. The first one is governance, because you can add a lot of resources with low code, but it's harder to plan and to have like a map or a strategy to see what are the different resources you have. And if, for example, at some point, if you have, let's say, a Salesforce or any other software deployment, and you transfer it to another person, there's a lot of knowledge, which is just so-called tribal knowledge. People know that things are here, but not necessarily well documented. So you need a proper plan. You need to make sure that you know what is happening and everything is documented. Code is by essence searchable. It's text, so you can easily search for something with searchable solutions. But for low code, it's a bit different. There's no standard for low code. So for example, if you need to migrate from one solution to another, or if business needs change, evolve, which happens all the time, we all know that, you need to know what is in place at the moment and how you can migrate or mitigate a risk. So that's really the first thing. And the second thing is quality. I've seen that unfortunately in the Salesforce community, but I know it's the same in other communities. Because low code is very fast, you develop very quickly, you often overlook the quality aspect of things. So testing in particular is something that people take a bit lightly when they develop with low code. So it's something not to be seen lightly. You need to invest in proper resources for testing. Even though you're coding very quickly, you're designing very quickly with low code, you need to make sure that your solution is robust and it will adapt to change in the future. So it goes a bit with governance. If people make some changes in your organization at some point, will your low-code processes still work in the future, for example? That is one of the key things people need to think about.
Thank you. And Kristóf, do you have anything to add? Because I know you are in contact with a lot of companies and you've done a lot of research about the market and the applicability of the low code.
I think it's the applicability is increasing because it brings some sort of abundance in development. So I'm talking about those ideas and digital potential solutions that have been never developed in the past. So the digitalization is a very hyped term among the corporates, but the development resources are very short. There are not enough people who can do it, and if someone is having an idea, it's very often under prioritized, or they had to wait like 6 months until delivery. Maybe it's losing its relevance, or people are just stopping. We are humans, stopping love it, so they are not caring that much about. So I think where it brings new potentials is developing those ideas pretty fast. That have been never developed in the past. And the limitations of this is, of course, there are. So it's good for everything, but especially if you're talking about environments or domains like financial, procurement, HR, sales, marketing. These are very well defined domains, and having a company A or B, they are having some differences, but many similarities. So I think these areas can be covered pretty much very well with platforms like Salesforce or ServiceNow that are excelling in, for instance, in IT processes, IT services. So I think when we are talking about these business domains, it's more like what have not been developed yet in the recent years will be developed in the coming years, and this is what is going to give applicability for low-code platforms.
Great answers, thank you. And so I think this applicability question connects us very well to all of the myths and misconceptions about low-code. And I think, Philippe, you can tell us a bit about that.
Yes, sure. So, sorry, I'm not sure I got the question. Can you just...
The myths and misconceptions about low-code, the most common ideas. Yeah.
Right. I think I just covered this, but
yeah.
So this was mainly about governance and quality, but I think because you iterate fast doesn't mean you should go fast. You need sometimes to take enough time to gather requirements and making sure all your stakeholders are in line. The ability really to deliver very quickly should not be taken lightly. That's something I want to enforce here. And also making sure your solutions will survive the test of time. That's, I think, something very important as well.
Thanks. I think this was more like on the technical side and not more on like what is low code is looking from the outside, how people perceive that who don't work in low code and who are not working as a coder developer. So maybe Kristóf, you can tell us what is that you are hearing from students, possible companies.
Okay, so low code is a very wide term, and it includes low code, no code platforms. And very often one of the misconceptions that you don't have to write code. You are just clicking on a user interface and you are building the software by just clicking together the existing elements, which is, in one hand, can be true, but when we are understanding what do we really need to develop, it always comes that we need to write code. So that's we are not there yet. Maybe 5 or 10 years we will be more into the no code side, but it's still requiring programming knowledge. And one of the misconceptions, which I have to admit we also had in Greenfox when we started to deal with this topic, that is, it's good because people don't have to be that great software engineers, but they just need to understand the process. So actually, they really have to become software engineers and know the object-oriented programming, understand databases, understanding APIs, and all of the software development related topics. Plus, they need to be very strong in soft skills and communication and understanding what they are doing. So I think this is a key differentiator, or can be a key differentiator. Like in the traditional programming, maybe a software engineer has time to deal with engineering problems for days or weeks. without seeing the actual result. Here, people can develop much faster. They can progress much faster. So they really need to understand whether they are going into the right direction. So they need to communicate with the other stakeholders in the project and really understanding it. So everyone has to be a little bit a business analyst in understanding the problem and not just software engineer. So it's maybe it's not Jiří or Philippe can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's requiring even more skills than the traditional software engineer, because you have to be a software engineer, but you have to really be part of the product team and understanding the needs from the business side.
So if you want to chime in, I definitely can. So you are right in many ways that, let's say, compared to, let's say, traditional programming, you don't need to build the servers and know how to configure the memories and stuff like this. And these engineering skills are important, that's for sure. But there are also, let's say, a different type of low-code, let's say, development, right? Which is really, and again, I'm going to be talking about this industry-specific tools that you start to see, like, you know, for example, in insurance claims. It's a very specific process, which is quite hard to create. And if you would have to program it from a start, you would have to understand quite a lot about insurance. And so the benefit is for those low-code systems is that we as an Accenture have a lot of people that actually know insurance in and out, know everything about the claims process, but because they can do it without actually going to the code, it's super faster to do it. And it's also, let's say, creating something what we call like a less of a technical depth. Because one of the biggest problems with the digital transformation, which you can see with a lot of older companies, is that they have a lot of built up code, which in many times they don't have documented people left and so on. But if you do it with these low-code technologies, the code is basically created for you. So, you know, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And there's also the standardization for a lot of stuff. So a lot of the processes in banks and insurances starts to look similar. And therefore, it's much easier for someone who works in the one bank to start to work in the other bank, right? Or get someone trained by your academy, and we just give them the skills around the industry. So it's like it's both, right? Because one thing what I really want to highlight, that some people that starting with the low code then move to the developer role, and they start to be more involved in you know, integrations and writing the code and stuff like this. And some other people will basically stay on the more like a consulting business analyst role. So there is a space for both types of people. That's what I would say. Katuš, back to you.
Thanks. I'm gonna give the word to Philippe as well, because we are starting to cover a couple of questions with the skills and the career path, and from the business side, I would like to hear Philippe's opinion of the career path and skill sets as well.
Yes, of course. So what I've seen in the Salesforce ecosystem is often people are coming from non-technical jobs, and we start working with a company, and they are one of the many users of the platform. So whether it is Salesforce or another technology, and at some point they get offered the opportunity to become admins. So people who are actually controlling the organization, managing the different employees there, defining the processes. And at some point they want to configure things, and they will figure out that they need to learn a bit technical skills, and low code is the perfect gateway to be moving from an admin perspective into something that is closer to a developer, not going full code instantly, of course, but starting to develop a bit of code. And there are, of course, some small programming languages, some sort of formulas that people can learn, and at some point they will also get into full code. So I think this is where I see the change that basically low code enables. It drives people interest into being in control, being able to customize a solution, being able to solve some business needs that otherwise they could not just solve with configuration. So with more power, they're really interested in helping others. That's really the way I see it.
Great, thanks. And with the career path, we have to talk a bit about salary ranges, because of course everybody is wondering about how much can a low-code developer earn in today's economy. So maybe Kristóf, you can chime in, or Jiří.
So it's a difficult question and varies companies by companies. But what I can tell is just everyone can do this math at home. So the demand for this platform-specific skills is increasing by the companies. So comparing to like a generic software engineer, especially if someone is starting like a new career or changing the career towards IT, is you can imagine that when are you more valuable for a company? If you have like a generic knowledge that is available on the market, of course there is a shortage of this, but there are multiple sources. Or if you have a platform specific knowledge like Salesforce, ServiceNow, just to name a few, and you're entering to the market with this knowledge. So that is adding up like 10 to 20%. And the reason why it's difficult to answer this question, because if one is arriving with a industry specific knowledge, let's say financial knowledge, healthcare, HR, marketing. So this knowledge can be utilized on these platforms and adding up big multipliers. So I can tell you a story when someone had a financial background, for instance, being a senior financial controller person, and this person didn't even have to compromise with the first salary as an engineer, even if being a junior engineer, comparing to his previous salary, and it was not a junior salary, I have to tell, because the background knowledge was essential in the new role. So, but even without this knowledge, the platform specific knowledge is always a plus for the companies. And I have to share that the IT salaries are booming, even just in the period when we started in Greenfox. In Hungary, it was around 350,000 gross that a junior can make. And now it's going up to 450,000 gross. And I'm still not talking about the platform specific or local specific knowledge. So this is booming in general, but I can say this platform specific knowledge is adding up minimum of 10, 15, 20%, plus the domain specific knowledge, which can sometimes double the starting salary.
Sounds like a career change is golden if you have a proficient background. Yes.
Okay, so maybe let me give you a little bit of how it looks like from the Accenture side.
Okay.
So, Kristóf is right about one thing. We're really looking for specific platform knowledge, because of course, if we have someone who has already experience with Salesforce, we can get them on the project faster. And that's for us super important. And this is why I was mentioning that the collaboration with Salesforce is important, because Salesforce has this fantastic tool called Trailhead. And I hope that someone can post a link to the Trailhead on the chat on Facebook, that people can start to learn today. And basically what we are really looking for are the people that, and especially, I'm doing just the Salesforce, so I can talk about Salesforce, but there are other parts of Accenture that are doing the different technology. But the first thing what we're looking at, do you want to do Salesforce? Do you really like the technology? Do you already invested the technology? So for example, one thing which we are looking at, we're looking at the Trailhead profile, especially for the new people, and to see if they start to take a Trailhead on, because this is the kind of the environment where they start to get hands-on. The other route which we really use quite successfully is that Kristóf is preparing the great amounts of people with Greenfox Academy, and they don't have just a Salesforce knowledge, but they also have a generic IT knowledge, which is helping to convert people from the, let's say, different roles in life to the IT professionals. And then they join Accenture and we help them to really grow fast. So number one thing what I can say is that when you're joining, it's always about the level where you will be at. So, you know, if you're joining and you already has a, let's say, platform app developer, build a certification or the admin certification for Salesforce, it's much easier because we know you are committed to the platform and you want to join, right? If you are joining just really like a first time, we don't know yet if you will be successful, right? So, but we of course have internal, let's say, trainings that can help people to get successful. But in Accenture, everything is about like, how fast you can get on a project. If you get on a project and how much you can basically contribute. Because one thing what I really want to highlight here, this is a team sport. This is not like the individual play. You always working with the team and you need to be valuable player. And more valuable player you are, then more, you know, your salary is going up, because also you don't have just salary, you have also some bonuses and stuff like this, and a lot of other perks which is coming with the job. So it's really up to you. You're going to be driving your career. And I'm really want to thank on this call Phil and the whole Salesforce team for absolutely fantastic job they do with Trailhead, because this is the best thing about being in a Salesforce ecosystem. You can always learn and learn and learn, and there's a kind of like a standard of learning that is kind of shared across the whole ecosystem. And it's super important, because it's also give you the comparison, how much people can be making, right? So we really tend to pay people well, if I would say like this. But if someone is interested in getting to work for Accenture, let me know, send me your CV. And if you have a certification, let's talk. And if you're alumni of Greenfox, of course, we already had a lot of them in the team, and some of them are really doing great.
And what just joining to the last talk, so what we are aiming in Greenfox when it comes to Salesforce specific courses is people are going to finish the course with some certificates. So of course there is a lot to learn, and especially the project specific knowledge. So there is much ahead. But with the Trailhead Salesforce platform, with the mentoring of Greenfox, they will already have some certificates. So that will shorten the time that Jiří and his team has to invest into the people. So that's something how the whole ecosystem is coming together.
Right.
If I could add still on this topic, I would say that with platforms like Trailhead, the online learning platform, we've really changed the way people acquire new skills. Before that, you were actually forced to go through university, stuff like that. This was time consuming, but this was also resource intensive because you had to pay for some sort of scholarship. Now, what we've seen with online platforms and courses like Greenfox is that people can take short breaks from their day-to-day job to change jobs. So they can learn skills and they can change jobs. And we've seen a number of professionals from various industries which have nothing to do with software. I've seen bakers, lawyers, even veterans learn on their weekends, at night, and really acquire new skills to turn into IT jobs and become successful professionals. That's really something that is really new here. And that's the power of low-code and all of these technologies together. You don't need years in degrees or master's degrees, which counts tens of thousands, if not hundreds. That's really a game changer. That's how fast things are moving, really.
Thanks. So we have covered that there is a different, maybe a little bit different skill set that low-code people need, and also that there are open jobs and there is a good career path and a very well paid career path if you are a team player. But how high is actually the demand for low-code developers? We know there is a shortage of developers. And there is a demand, but what is the actual demand for low code skills? Maybe.
So Katush, happy to answer that. Like,
yeah,
we're hiring people all the time. So everyone on this call who has the skills, we're hiring. That's the best answer. Like
no limits. There's no limits. You just
we have so many.
Higher.
We have more projects than people definitely coming on our pipeline. So it's definitely and the demand is growing so fast that like I can't even tell you how many people are hiring because we're hiring all the time. So yeah, anyone who just get a certification, work with Kristóf in a Greenfox, come to me and let's have an interview. If you pass.
That's very good news for Greenfox applicant. But this is Accenture, so can we hear from Kristóf and Philippe as well from the other?
Yeah, I would say it goes even bigger than this. I've seen in France, I'm based in France, I've seen companies start new schemes. In France, there are some companies which heavily invest in internships, and people are willing to take people who are not skilled, do an internship with them to train them with the technology and hire them at the end of the internship. So it goes even beyond having the skills and applying. They're actually recruiting people who don't yet have the skills, training them, and then recruiting them. So this is the level of investment companies are making to fill that gap already.
What I can share with you is two things, is aside of confirming the demand is high, but is giving the magnitude of this, how high it is, because there is a high demand for traditional programmers too. But what we can see is if someone is taking a traditional programming track, we'll find a job for sure. So no doubts about it. But from the company's perspective, there is an on and off in hiring, because as projects are starting and finishing, there will be always a company that is hiring. But from the individual company perspective, even very big companies are very hardly predict in 3 months or 6 months ahead that how many people are they actually going to need in that specific quarter. So maybe they are slowing down in recruitment in 1 quarter year. In the next quarter year, they want to hire everyone. What we can see from the low-code platforms, it's a very balanced, continuous hiring. So we do not see this on and off. Probably because of the projects, there are too many projects. And why is this happening? What is the phenomenon that we have discovered? For some reasons, the traditional developers are not preferring that much to switching to low code, comparing to the demand for low code development. It has numerous reasons. I think more like rumors, or I don't know where is this coming from, but I can share some stories about it, like 5 or 10 years ago when people are talking about cloud or higher level programming language. No, programming is just the very low level programming, and I don't want to touch higher level programming. And there was always this kind of developer attitude, like a little bit elitism or snobism towards new level platforms. And the outcome of this, there is more room for juniors. Because people who are a little bit more agnostic towards this and not taking it from the elitist perspective, but willing to do the job, companies are investing into that. And people can develop their skills very fast on these platforms, so they can reach a certain level of seniority within a few years that is going to be very valuable. So I think these two phenomena is very important. The predictability from the job market perspective, and there is a bigger room for juniors in low-code platforms. Of course, they need to gain the experience point to become seniors on these platforms too. But I think this is a interesting characteristics of these career paths.
Are you saying that like the low-code developers could help with the shortage of traditional developers that's on the market now?
The short answer is yes.
Short answer is yes. Does anybody have a longer?
Yeah, I can definitely add a longer version. So, the reason why it's happening, because all the companies are doing the digital transformation. And what is driving digital transformation? It's cloud. And when you think about cloud like Salesforce, one thing what we are doing with the old processes and so on, we are refactoring them, right? So instead of like a lot of hard-coded stuff in the bank, we actually using some like a pre-built processes which are coming from those industry solutions, and we are actually building it in the standardized way. And this is no longer the traditional coding. This is really exactly what I was mentioning. This is like a building these modules in this low-code environment. It's a little bit like you playing with the Lego. You receive the blocks and you building it, but of course another thing is that there's another team which is actually doing, let's say, connection to the let's say traditional part of the bank, which will need some coding. But this is exactly the reason why the demand is growing, because we are moving more things to the cloud, and when things are moving to the cloud, they are becoming more and more low code. Phil, do you want to chime in on this one?
No, I agree. There's even more demand. And the thing is, there's more software demands, more need for software vendors. Of course, when you're a software vendor, you don't build your tool with low code, unfortunately. So there's definitely going to be demand in both spaces. And having more low code tools means that like people who are really fond of code can really focus on pro code solutions, and they leave more space for people who have more appetite for low code. So I think it's a good balance. There are both spaces that need to be filled with different skill sets. So yeah.
Thanks. So we talked about junior developers, junior low code programmers, and experts. So are there low code experts? What are they working on? What is their job? Philippe?
Yes. So I would say low-code experts are people who are very familiar with the platform itself. I think you mentioned it, Kristóf, earlier. When you know about a specific platform, you have extra value. And of course, there's no standard in a low-code environment. So if you know about Salesforce, well, you're going to be a Salesforce expert. But if you know about SAP, about Microsoft, well, you're going to be expert in the other field. And these specific skills do not carry over. If you change technology, well, you'll have kind of to restart from scratch. So I think this is how you become a low-code expert. You have to focus on a platform and really master it, so that you know every possible feature and best practice how to get from point A to point B in the most efficient way, in the most future-proof way as well. And after that, there's all the little soft skills that come together with this, all of the business requirement collecting, all the management handling with the different stakeholders, all of these, which of course can carry over, of course, from project to project.
Okay, maybe if I may as well on this one, the one thing what we really see from the low code perspective is this kind of like the rise of this, like the industry cloud specialization. Because these are like a pre-built modules. So let's say for insurance, how you do the quoting, how you do the claims, how you do the policy administration and stuff like this. And this is really mostly in some kind of like a UI and declarative environment, which is low code in many ways. And therefore, this is the specialization which is really probably going to be the future, because you will have people that's going to be specialized on certain industries.
Great, thanks. So we covered a lot of ground in terms of where low code is now, and we predicted a little bit, or what other people predict. And what are your own predictions? Where is low code 5 years from now? What's happening in the low code market? Philippe?
So what I think is happening right now is that it's touching every domain. And as I mentioned at the start of the session, there are things we hadn't thought of, like, for example, DevOps or AI. These are domains that we would never think of when we're thinking about the beginning of low code. So now really there's no space that can be untouched by this technology. And this gives even more power to business users, to non-technical users, to create content and iterate on it. What will really help with this, I think, is again AI, because AI can be applied smartly to helping people develop, not just directly with code, but just proposing ideas to people, make them really iterate faster with suggestions. Because we can notice, for example, 10 people have developed a process this way. Maybe you want to do kind of the same thing, yet have your take on how it should look like. So suggestions, not real goals. So leaving you the ability to make decisions, but suggesting things when you don't know where to start from. I think this is really where we'll see an evolution. So going faster with even more help and documentation.
Jiří?
So I would definitely concur what Phil was talking about AI. I would probably expand it a little bit even more. You know, one thing why low code is favored by the vendors is because actually, let's say it's teaching their machine learning models what people build, and therefore they are able to introduce the smarter application, which are start to kind of like a self-build. That's one of the reasons why the low code is a super cool area, because basically many developer jobs will go away. The reason is because it will not be demand for them, because a lot of the things going to be generated by AI. I can't predict how much it will be, but I think that probably like 10 years time, it might be significant amount what's going to be really generated. And we will be probably looking at this era when we had to do some kind of like a configuration as almost like we're looking at the iPhone and the Nokia phone in 2000s or something like this, right? So I really believe that this is the AI will play a much bigger role. And obviously what I mentioned about the this industry packages, absolutely. And the another part is the integration. Because one of the biggest problem you can see when you do transformation of some large companies or even smaller companies, there's a lot of legacy stuff that you still connect to, right? And there are a lot of specific processes that you would have to build some specific code. But with this like a low code integration, like for example, Salesforce is doing fantastic job with a product called MuleSoft, which is definitely one of the future things in Salesforce, which you will see more and more. You know, this is by the way also quite a lot of low code. Yes, with some code as well, but it's low code as well, right? So this is where it's going. So AI, this kind of industry models and the integration, but we could talk about this for many hours. So I'll probably ask Kristóf to say something.
Thank you. I think in a few years, let's say 5 years, most of the people are going to be capable to use these tools in a very similar way how we are using Excel in an office environment. So when we want to make something happening, like calculating something, setting up something, we are using Excel in most of the times. And I think when in the future, when there will be someone who is having an idea how to improve something, how the information flows within the company, or offer something new for a client, or optimizing something, this is going to be handled on the field by those people who are sensing it. So it's I would use the word giving back, but it's never was there the power to act. It was always the IT department who was responsible and in charge to these things. But I think in 5 years it will be realistic that most of the people will be able to develop their own application or optimizing the applications.
This is a nice conclusion. Thank you so much. And just before we move on to the questions, because we have a couple of questions from our audience, is there anything that you would like to mention, Kristóf, about Greenfox and your program that's starting in February, I think?
Yes, the first Salesforce specific course starting in February, and the bigger scale is going to start in March for traditional programming. Everyone is going to start with that because we need to learn the programming basics, and then we can choose different orientation paths towards Salesforce, of course, ServiceNow, but backend, frontend, and full stack programming. And within 4.5 months, super intense course. So by the summer, Jiří and his team and other people are going to wait for these people to begin the interviewing process. So the career changing is possible till the midsummer, and we are still accepting applications for that. And what I can guarantee that this is going to be the hardest and the most rewarding experience. And it's not coming from me, but from the alumni who already went through on this course.
Great, thank you. So let's move on to the questions. I have one question from Andres. How many days, weeks, months, years of study experience one would need to start working with low code in an entry-level position? And when can he and she become an expert? So I think Kristóf just covered with the four and a half months for an entry level.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I can do a little bit more detail the first part, and for the second part, and when someone is becoming an expert, I would let the gentleman answer that part. So we are launching now the developer track, and yes, it's 4.5 months. But we are planning to launch another program for a non-programming direction. If someone wants to approach it from the no-code perspective, become an administrator who is configuring and translating the business needs to the developers, and that is going to last for 2 months. We are planning to launch it around April. You shall not expect you will expert in programming, but you are going to focus rather on the platform. So it varies between 2 and 4.5 months. And how long does it take to become an expert? Well, Jervan, it's yours.
Okay. It's a blurry line, but yeah, go ahead.
I don't know. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, there's no expert stamp really that you'll get. Everybody can say I'm an expert in X, Y, and Z. What I would say is that peers will recognize you as an expert when you start solving business needs from various entities, when you start touching various products. For example, when you did integrations with other software and your own core expertise, these are the key things you should be looking at. After that, also, it can be a matter of collecting certifications. I think this is what can be really measured. Some people do not care about certifications, but they can still be experts. But some people really value certifications, and they can also use those to leverage to get a pay raise, for example. Jiří, what do you think?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, like you will become expert when you deliver projects. That's something like this, right? So, you guys train people to become low-code developers, but as many of your alumni, for example, Jirka Váňa is one of the guys in my team who's your alumni, is doing a great job with us, but he basically had the skills from you. But what he didn't have, the experience, for example, how you do the transformation in a bank or something like this. And this is where the people starts to shine if they start to be successful in the environment like this, right? So it's really about like, if you are able to survive the project and if you are able to be successful, in that team. So yeah, that's most important. And of course, you need to gain those trailheads, badges and a certification and stuff like this, because it's help you with the not just the recognition, but also with your own knowledge, which you then go and apply on the real project.
Great, thanks. So next question is from Jana. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Is the knowledge gained on Greenfox courses enough to start and develop as a low-code programmer, or are there any limitations in comparison to people who have studied IT at universities? I think the first part of the question was already answered, but maybe just on the university course differences.
I think if I answer the first part of the question, there would be a little conflict of interest. So, but our statistics suggest yes, it's enough. But it's Jiří maybe can comment it better than I.
Okay, so one of the best thing about the low code, it's a kind of democratization of IT. it's really, as Phil said, the people can come from many backgrounds. You don't need to have a degree in computer engineering or something like this, because that's one of the great benefit here. And from our perspective, we want people that are able to deliver the job, right? We can, and the success is about you delivering for the client, and the client is happy and things are working. So yes, there is of course, benefit when you have a computer degree, for example, because it looks very good on your CV, of course. But if you have a lot of certification and great trailhead and stuff like this, it's also playing quite a big part for the recognition. So yeah, Phil.
I agree with what you said. It's down to the job itself, actually, whether it is more a match for like a professional programmer or someone who is more open, has experience in other fields, an appetite for low code. No job is the same, so it's kind of hard to answer this question in the absolute terms, but I think both paths are perfectly valid, and there's no need to be overqualified for a job, for example. So both options are valid.
Right. So Matusz is asking, how much is low code applicable on a freelance level?
Okay, I probably can start this one, because before joining Accenture, I was doing the freelancing many years. I stopped because of COVID, because I didn't want to travel. And if you do something like Salesforce, it can keep you busy a lot, and the rates are constantly going up because the demand is going up. But you need to invest in yourself. That's a number one thing. And definitely low code is applicable on a freelance market, but there's one thing what you need to remember. You need to specialize on something. Give you an example, let's say you have a Salesforce marketing cloud. It's a very niche demand, and it's pretty, there's a lot of open roles. But for example, if you have let's say the specialization, let's say the Salesforce Financial Services Cloud or something like this, again, these are the low code technologies. Again, usually what is happening, and this is the reason why I many times mentioned the industry, what the companies are not want to do is they don't want to put in a role when you are a freelancer, someone who never seen, for example, manufacturing company or healthcare or something like this, because they will probably want someone who actually did, let's say, Salesforce in a pharma company, if this is the case, right? So if you start to specialize on something which is bigger applicability in the market. But of course, there are generic Salesforce roles, because you can become a specialized in something like Service Cloud or Sales Cloud or Commerce Cloud or something like this. There are many open roles for this as well. And I don't know about the other clouds, but Salesforce is growing like hell every day. So Phil.
No, totally agree with what you said. I would say the hardest part is not the low code itself. Freelance is totally relevant. The harder part is being a freelancer in general, like building a portfolio, building a network of people you can call out to when there's some expertise you need additionally, and making sure you're recognized by your past employers. That's really the hardest part. Not the low code. There's demand for it. There's no question. So picking the right branch, picking the right customers, making sure you get paid. Because as every time when you're a freelancer, this can be the hard part. Nothing specific with low code here. It's really freelancer's life.
That's true. Okay, maybe we can move to the next question, which is there some limitation by age or more life knowledge means an advantage? It's from Robert.
Yeah, I probably can take this one. So, one thing what we really see at Accenture is that we have all age groups, joining. It can be young people, it can be people with the more experiences. It's really depends what is it what you want to do. Some people can look for the transformation either in later stages of their career, right? It's like a number one thing what we are looking is that do you have the right skills and a kind of like a right mindset to become part of this movement, if you like. And one of the great thing, and I can't recommend this enough, go to Greenfox, because it's going to give you the first, taste how it looks like when you actually start to do things in a real world on the projects. And of course, the next thing which you should be doing together with Greenfox, also study Trailhead, because on a Trailhead you actually start to get this practical knowledge. What is it to build on Salesforce? And you will either love it or you don't. There's nothing else, right? It's just like, if you can, and many times you will also find out that your, let's say, previous background. I give you example in sales. Salesforce, of course, by the name was the CRM and the sales. So, for example, a lot of people with a sales background or a marketing background are moving to the low-code jobs with Salesforce because they have the knowledge of the sales processes, marketing processes, or something like this. But don't worry if you, for example, work, let's say, in manufacturing. That's the reason why I mentioned a couple of times industries. There are consumer goods, there is a pharmaceutical, there is financial services. So there is as I mentioned, 20% of the companies right now are in the cloud. So this means there is 80% of the companies that are not yet in cloud, and someone has to do it, and there are not enough people. Phil.
Yeah, what I really like about low-code is that it breaks the barrier between the classes and between the age groups. So having more experience, being a bit older, can help you because you've learned soft skills. You know how to handle people, you know how to behave in a company, you know how hierarchy works, how processes work. It may be not the right industry for you yet, but you already start with some knowledge with you. You don't bring any expectations, basically. You know how things can evolve. Being young also is quite interesting because being young, you don't have also some bias. For example, you're coming with a fresh mind, so you can also inject new ideas to the table. So I think both are equally valid. You just have to have the passion and the energy, and a lot of it comes to the willingness to invest a bit of time into training yourself. And as here mentioned, you can do this on Trello or other platforms, but it's a matter of making sure you take your life in your own hands and start training and learning on, because it's a job where you never stop learning. You have to have this passion. I think it's important.
Thanks. And Kristóf, from the education side?
Yeah, I think it's I cannot add more, rather just underline that life experience is a big value for our company partners. So comparing juniors who are coming out from universities, they are having a deep computer science knowledge, a little bit less pragmatic programming knowledge, but they can learn, of course, these things. But as Phil has mentioned, that these people do not really have the life and work experience. So our partners valuing a lot big times that these people already know what it means to work and work hard. And if they are finishing Greenfox, they already proving their mindset. So they are willing to learn and they can learn.
Yeah, that's what I hear as well, because you mentioned a lot how soft skill is more important, especially with the low-code development area. So coming from the career change and investing soft skill training in soft skills training at Greenfox as well must be a good selling point. You just received one more question. If you have still just 2 minutes for the last question to be asked. If I decide for a low-code job after Greenfox Academy, is it possible to change back to pro code? This is coming from Sima.
So I can probably answer that because I will be hiring Sima. So it's as I mentioned, right? Bear in mind that the Greenfox is going to give you that foundation. Then we will put you on the projects. As I said, we have a lot of people actually that are alumni in our team, and the one thing what they do at Accenture, this is their kind of like a discovery, because if it's the first time for them in the consulting, they can find they like something, they like, I don't know, let's say the manufacturing, or they like communications industry or something like this. So, but some people discover that they, for example, like, DevOps, which is something which you will not learn at Greenfox in the detail, but because of the of the project that they will be assigned to. They might end up, leading the DevOps and become a specialist in stuff like this, or they can become developers. Because the best thing about low code is that it's the first step on your journey towards your IT career. It doesn't matter where it leads. One day you can be CIO. Who knows? You start. So you just need to do that first step, and where it leads, you never know. Phil?
Totally agree with you. You can be a developer, of course. You can evolve as a developer, but you could also evolve as an architect, maybe, and like being the mastermind of a large organization. That's totally up to you. Actually, you have all the options in your hand. Don't limit yourself to one job. It's like your entire career. It's not because you start your career doing like a manual job, like being, I don't know, working in a pharmacy, and next day you don't have to end up your career in healthcare. You can actually change and evolve to move to a totally different industry. With low code, it's the same. You don't have to stick with low code. You don't have to stick with the same platform. You can change as long as you have this openness and willingness to learn. I think you can really do anything you like.
And I'm happy for this question, because this is a misconception that is coming up often, or a fear, a natural fear, that whether people are logged into a box. But imagine this: if you're able to quit from your job, a non-IT job, and learn programming at Greenfox, and passing the final exam in Greenfox, which means you're a qualified junior software engineer, whether you start at low code or whatever field. Imagine if you're able to do this, then already within the IT, how incomparable easy to do any kind of shifts, to any kind of direction, because you are in. So don't be afraid that you will be logged into a box and you will know nothing but low code development, because one thing that what we trying to transmit in Greenfox is you can learn everything, and you can really do whatever you want if you have the motivation.
I think this was the perfect closing thought for this hour-long roundtable conversation. So I would like to thank you, all three of you, for participating tonight, Philippe, Jiří, and Kristóf as well. And I would like to thank our audience for the attention. And if you want to, this is for the audience, if you want to find out if low code would be appropriate for you, Greenfox can help you in that area as well. There is a tech career quiz on the Greenfox website, www.greenfoxacademy.com. And Andrea, our colleague, will share that. We'll share the link in the comment section of the Facebook Live. And if you want to start your career as a low-code developer, you can apply for our junior developer course at Greenfox Academy, as it has been mentioned a couple of times during this conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
The session was recorded, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. Thank you for mentioning that. Yes, you can rewatch or send it to other people who might be interested, and please do.
And Katush, you also forgot to mention that people can apply to Accenture, especially when they are alumni of Greenfox.
Well, I think, that you can always apply to Accenture. They are hiring limitless.
All the time. Local developers, alumni of Greenfox, please come here.
Yeah.
We're pretty clear about it. Yes.
I would just add one more thing, that we are really welcoming everyone from all countries. So check out the greenfoxacademy.cz.sk.com. That EGU, so from all countries, and you will not regret it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.